What if I told you that right now, in the middle of 2026, the PGA Tour is sitting on a ticking time bomb, and the man holding the detonator is a former NFL executive who has never hit a shot under real tour pressure in his life? Stay with me, because by the end of this video you are going to understand exactly why some of the biggest names in golf are quietly, and not so quietly, sending a message to their new boss, and why the answer to "Is the PGA Tour about to blow itself up?" might be closer than anyone wants to admit. Brian Rolapp took over as PGA Tour CEO in the middle of last year, arriving with more than 2 decades of experience at the NFL, where he helped drive the league's global expansion and built a reputation as one of the sharpest media and business minds in American sports. And when his appointment was announced, even Rory, a man who does not hand out compliments lightly, called it a really positive thing, praising Rolapp's background and saying he had certainly said all the right things. That was the honeymoon phase. Fast forward to now, and the mood has shifted, because Rolapp has not been shy about tearing up the PGA Tour's rulebook, and the scale of what he is planning is honestly staggering. Starting in the 2028 season, the Tour is moving toward a 2-tier structure, Track A and Track B, where players are promoted and relegated based on performance, almost exactly like the relationship between the Premier League and the Championship in English football, meaning for the first time in PGA Tour history, simply being a card-carrying tour member will not guarantee you a spot among the elite. You will have to earn it every single year or get dropped down a tier. Rolapp himself put it bluntly, saying the message to members is, play well and you earn the opportunity to compete in our biggest events and for more money. Which sounds great if you're Scottie Scheffler, but sounds terrifying if you're one of the dozens of journeyman pros whose livelihood depends on stability, not survival of the fittest sports business theory borrowed from European soccer. And that's just one piece of it. Rolapp has also confirmed the Tour is moving away from small, limited field, no-cut signature events he has openly admitted were a mistake, toward bigger fields of at least 120 players with a genuine 36-hole cut. He's floated the idea of expanding into massive new markets like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Washington, and he's even teased blowing up the postseason entirely, exploring match play, win-or-go-home formats for the Tour Championship instead of the current point system, because, in his own words, "We have heard from our fans and our partners, they want more drama." Now here's the question you should be asking. When a former NFL executive starts talking about drama, scarcity, and consequence, like he's redesigning a reality TV show, how do the actual players, the guys whose bodies, careers, and family time are on the line, really feel about it? Because behind the press conferences and the polished letters to fans, there has been a slow-building undercurrent of frustration, and it boiled over in the most public way possible right after the Open Championship this year. See, the Open is supposed to be golf's crown jewel, the oldest major in the sport, played on historic link rounds where legends are made. But this year, instead of just celebrating the champion, the storyline coming out of the tournament was about players using their platform, in the biggest media moment of the year, to say something about the state of their own tour. Rory, fresh off completing the career Grand Slam earlier in the year at the Masters, walked off the course after his final round and told reporters flat out that he would not be playing on the PGA Tour again for a while, saying, "And I'm going to give you this one directly because the wording matters. The PGA Tour is in a lot of flux at the minute, with a lot of their schedule and structure and everything like that." Read between the lines on that for a second. This is a 2-time major winner this year, arguably the most influential voice in the men's game, essentially telling the world's golf media that he doesn't even want to engage with his own tour right now because he doesn't know what it's going to look like from one year to the next. And McIlroy isn't some disgruntled outsider either. He has a lifetime PGA Tour membership from 30 career wins, which means he technically doesn't even have to hit the minimum 15-event requirement, so when he chooses to sit out anyway, that's not obligation, that's a statement. But he's not the only one. Justin Rose, ahead of a different big event earlier in the year, publicly urged Rolapp to give players and fans clarity, a word that keeps surfacing again and again in this saga, because clarity is exactly what has been missing. Maverick McNeely, who actually sat inside the room as part of the tour's future competition committee while these changes were being hammered out, revealed after one of Rolapp's press conferences that the single biggest issue players pushed back on wasn't the money, wasn't the format, it was rest. It was the ability to control their own schedules. Because as McNeely put it, one of the best parts of their job has always been that they're not mandated on when they have to play, and that freedom is now under threat. Then there's Justin Thomas, who admitted he goes back and forth on whether he'll even play certain stretches of the newly bunched schedule, specifically flagging the crowded run of events in the weeks leading up to major championships as something that could push him to skip tournaments entirely if the courses or the timing don't suit him. And layered underneath all of this is a warning that should genuinely worry tour executives. With events getting jammed closer and closer together, the RBC Heritage stacked right up against the Zurich Classic, a signature event squeezed in right before a major. One respected voice in the golf media bluntly said, "It does not let up. It is only going to get worse." Comparing the scheduling chaos to the NBA's ongoing load management crisis, a problem that even Commissioner Adam Silver, with all his resources, still hasn't solved. So ask yourself this: if four of the biggest names in golf, McIlroy, Rose, McNeely, and Thomas, are all independently raising red flags about clarity, rest, and structure, all within the same stretch of 2026, is that a coincidence? Or is that 5, 6, 7 players deep of quiet dissent finally reaching the surface, right at the moment the golf world's cameras were pointed at the Open Championship, the single biggest stage available to send a message without technically starting a public war? Because here's the thing about professional athletes. They rarely blow up their employer in public unless they feel like private conversations aren't working, and when McIlroy chooses the walk off the 18th green at a major, microphones rolling, to say the tour is in a lot of flux rather than something safer and more diplomatic, that is not an accident. That is a calculated message aimed directly at the man in charge. And Rolapp knows it. This is a guy who spent 20 years in a league where players, unions, and front offices battle constantly over exactly these issues: schedule, health, money, control, so he is not naive to what's happening. In fact, when reporters pushed him on whether all of this restructuring was some kind of reaction to competition from LIV Golf, the Saudi-backed rival league that's been raiding the tour's talent pool for years, Rolapp pushed back hard, insisting this was never about any competition, and doubling down that the best collection of golfers in the world are on the PGA Tour, a confident claim, but one that conveniently ignores the fact that stars like Jon Rahm, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, and others are out there thriving on LIV's massive paychecks, and every time a big name grumbles about the PGA Tour's chaotic new direction, you can bet LIV's recruiters are watching closely, phones in hand, checkbooks open. That's the real stakes here. This isn't just an internal scheduling dispute, this is a talent war, and if Rolapp's revolution alienates even a handful of top 20 players who feel like their voices aren't being heard, the PGA Tour risks handing LIV Golf exactly the ammunition it needs to poach even more stars, at a moment when golf's civil war is already fragile enough as it is. So where does this actually leave us? Rolapp is pressing forward regardless. The two-track promotion and relegation system, the bigger fields, the return to cuts, the exploration of match play playoffs, even a possible new signature event at Trump National Doral in Miami, are all steaming ahead toward a planned rollout for the 2028 season, and he's dismissed critics who say the new tiered system just formalizes inequality between the haves and have-nots, insisting instead that sports is about how good the athletes are and what the competitive consequences are. But here's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all of his confident press conferences. You can build the most dramatic, made-for-television structure in the world, but if the players, the actual product people are paying to watch, don't buy in, if they keep using major championship podiums to broadcast their frustration to millions of viewers, the entire vision falls apart before it even launches. And that's exactly why what happened after the Open Championship matters so much, because it wasn't Rolapp controlling the narrative that week. it was the players. Every time a superstar stands at a microphone after a major and chooses honesty over diplomacy, that's a crack in the foundation, and cracks like that tend to spread. So now I want to know what you think. Is Brian Rolapp the bold visionary golf desperately needed after years of stagnant, predictable scheduling, or is he a football executive from a completely different sport trying to force a square peg into a round hole, alienating the very stars who make the PGA Tour worth watching in the first place? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Tell me which players' comments hit hardest for you, and if you think this tour civil war is only just getting started, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story is moving fast. More players are going to speak up, and you do not want to miss what comes next when the PGA Tour's next major press conference rolls around. Because if this is what happened after just one Open Championship, imagine what's coming once the 2028 changes actually go live.